I'm going to let you know that it is indeed my pleasure today. Our guest presenter is Renee Richardson, and Renee is a full-time instructor with in the College of Business with the School of Accounting. She's also serves as the faculty advisor for the Accounting Students Association for the School of Accounting. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Renee.
Welcome, everyone. I appreciate your joining me today. And thank you to Dr. Judy Summers and the COSI team for inviting me to speak, and definitely thanking them for working with me over the years to improve my courses. I teach accounting information systems and data analytics courses, so Screencast certainly is an obvious choice in terms of using technology in courses, but we're going to explore some ways that you can use it in multiple courses. I've been using Screencastify assignments extensively in all my classes since fall. Wasn't just a COVID transition. I'd been thinking about it. I'd had students use Screencast type assignments for group projects exclusively before then, but now I've integrated them into almost every week assignments. We will be having some participation options throughout the session. I will give you a very high level overview of screencasting in general. I will mention some benefits that I have found from using Screencastify, and I will give you some specific examples. I will also be sharing some documents with you that I utilize in my course. I'll also do a very quick walkthrough of the process, and you can see how quick and easy it is. And in the end, I'll give you some suggestions based on what I've learned since last fall using this extensively. And finally, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So the types of participation we will ask you to share with us today is what subjects do you teach, which that should be open already. And then later on, after each one of these closes and we look at the results, the next one will open. Do you use Screencastify for your own course materials now? Do you at all have your students use Screencastify? And then later explore at the end how you think you could use it in your course if you don't already. For our first Slido poll, what subjects do you teach? Okay, we have accounting that's my, and I did not pad this Slido with 10 accounting entries, I promise. So now you should see the Slido. All right, well, thank you for sharing. That helps me. So I'm looking at, so languages, I see language. I know Screencastify assignments are very helpful in having your students speak the language, and then that way you can grade them based on their speaking, even in a fully online course. Seeing the sciences, so the sciences are technologically intensive. So that would be similar to accounting in the sense that you want to foster technological agility. Education, certainly we are teaching children at all levels, or students, I should say, at all levels, how to use technology. Right, so that is very helpful. Thank you for sharing. So a very high level overview here. For those of you who don't know the difference, screenshot versus screencast, a screenshot is a photograph. It's a static photograph. So if I took a screenshot of this screen now, it would just be this one slide. And a screencast is a recording. So you can record what is on your screen, similar to if you were recording your Zoom session or your WebEx session teaching in class, or you can also add your webcam, or even show your webcam only. So it's have more options. Now, these are not the only available tools, certainly, but these are the ones I use and what I've heard from colleagues the most common. I'll mention Screencast-O-Matic first. The Screencast-O-Matic does have a free version, and some students are familiar with it, and I've heard that they are using it in other classes. I use Screencastify for my professional use, for my course materials. It has an excellent auto caption feature and very easy editing tools. So if you're interested, those premium, you have to get the premium version, which is about $48 a year. So I'm not plugging Screencastify as a sponsorship. I'm just saying it's been very helpful to me. But Screencastify, or pardon me, Screencast-O-Matic I've been using professionally. Screencastify, what I like about it for students, it is certified FERPA compliant. So I recognize that link And once you see one, you'll see it says google.drive, and then there'll be some characters. So when I see that link, I know that my students' private information, login information is protected. The other reason I like Screencastify for the students is it's automatically stored in their FAU drive as long as they are logged into their FAU drive when they utilize Screencastify. So these two features are the predominant reason why I use Screencastify for students instead of Screencast-O-Matic. The other reason is, that you can see from these technology requirements, they are very basic, they are free, and they are simple. You install a Screencastify extension, which takes a few mouse clicks and a few moments, and you're ready to go. So now we have another Slido. Do you currently use screencasting for your course materials? So this would be for your own materials that you're presenting to students, as opposed to students using it to present materials to you. So I just want to get an idea, yes or no, of whether you have experience using a screencasting tool. Okay, so we got 2/3 who haven't used screencasting yet. Just one more, again, more tip. For your personal, try Screencastify. You'll see how easy it is to practice. Try Screencast-O-Matic, which is free as well. But for your materials, again, I would recommend Screencast-O-Matic because of their auto-generated captions, which save a lot of time. You don't have to, you just have to edit them after the fact. You don't have to type all your captions in. So it's accessible for multiple learners. And the editing materials, the editing tools are very user-friendly. Wonderful. Okay, so that gives me an idea of our audience. So the benefits are extensive. Overall, student engagement is increased in the obvious way that they are speaking to you. It may be asynchronously, but they are speaking to you. So that overall is the great benefit, that personal touch. I also like that personal touch. I encourage students to send me a Screencastify if they want to communicate something to me instead of just typing a Canvas message. I use both Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, and my Clips tool on my iPhone to send video messages to students. So you've increased this engagement and this humanization of the online environment, which is invaluable, as I'm sure many of you have noticed during this last year when we've been mostly remote. So besides those obvious benefits, the critical thinking aspect of encouraging students to go beyond the what to the why. When I assign Screencastify assignments, there is always an element of why, explaining why you're doing something. Either explaining why you are creating something or choosing things in a certain way, such as a formula, a data analytics formula in Excel. Why are you choosing those particular arguments in that formula? Because it's quite easy just to create the formula. And as we all know, it's quite easy for someone to create it for the student, right? And share it across students and submit it that way. So instead of just submitting an Excel spreadsheet, completed spreadsheet, I have them complete the spreadsheet and submit it, but then also do screencast explaining different segments, whether it's formulas, how they created the formula, why they chose those arguments, whether it's the results at the end, have them analyze the results to me, have them give me an example of how to use this in the workplace. And all these extra things I put in are not in the textbook. So that requires them to do this critical thinking beyond just following the textbook. So that to me has been invaluable in both the AIS and the data analytics courses. And then the communication skills, the obvious is they're practicing it. But I found it especially important. Now, I've been remote since COVID started, but I do teach on campus. And I will continue to use this because some students don't want to speak up in class, and that's understandable, the pressure, right, of speaking up in front of everyone. But this way they can practice their oral communication skills in a safer environment, knowing that I will be the only one that sees it. And I have had students say that they really appreciate that option. Technological agility, that is a buzzword in the accounting profession specifically and in business in general. It's been a desired trait for many years, but now it's coming to the forefront, and not just because of COVID, but because of the vast amount of technology that's infiltrating all aspects of our processes. in all career paths and all disciplines. So technological agility means how comfortable are you learning new technology, and critically, how comfortable are you in adapting quickly to new technology? And employers are looking for this in our graduates. And granted, maybe more so for the business degrees, science degrees, but they are still looking for that technological agility, because even if you're in the arts, there will be technology in the arts behind the scenes, other than performing art, the actual performing arts, that students need to be comfortable with. So this helps them gain that agility. And in collaboration, whether you're synchronous, asynchronous, or in class, you can have the students use Screencastify with each other so they can explain to their teammates what they're working on. It's so much easier for them to speak and show rather than trying to type up this grammatically correct explanation of what they're working on and sharing it in an email or a message. They can also provide peer review, either before they turn in the group project or as an official assignment afterwards that you might grade. And I like this feature. You can combine screencasts to create a group presentation, which we'll talk about in a moment. The overall bonus for using Screencastify is not just the benefit for the assignments themselves, but students can then have an easy way to show you issues they're having. For those of you who have tried to troubleshoot students' questions about technology, you see that it's very difficult sometimes for them to articulate because they're not familiar with the technology terms, and it's sometimes difficult for you to understand without seeing. So I just say to students, show me in a screencast. They'll show me how they tried to log into something, they tried to download something, they tried to install something, and they do it in a screencast, and then it's as though I'm sitting there, and then I can answer them more efficiently. And this other bonus is, especially for online students, is they can ask for assistance. They can pull up their assignment and say, for example, I teach flowcharts. They can say, I'm not sure what to do with this section of the flowchart. Could you help me? I would like to try, do you think I should try this or should I try that? And that way it's asynchronous, especially for the students that work and can't meet you during office hours or have very irregular hours, and you can communicate asynchronously. So it even enhances your office hours and your availability to help students, because you can do asynchronously what you would be doing face-to-face or via Zoom synchronously. I found those to be great benefits. Now, some examples. So this, I give this to students, these tips. So they're not just for you. This is what I give to students. Right now, I have it as a separate page in Canvas called a tools to use page, because I use a lot of tools in my class, a lot of technology tools. But I'm creating this for this session. I'm going to transition to this document because I refer to it a lot for students. So technical requirements, these links, these tutorials are all directly from Screencastify. So these links. The tips you can go through at your leisure. I want to just talk about the troubleshooting for a moment. There's a learning curve in the beginning for students. And as you know, you can create instructions and think they're clear, right? And then a student will think they're following them and still the outcome is not what was expected. So the two most common reasons that you cannot view their recording, which is usually after the deadline when you're grading, is because they've put the recording in the trash after the fact. Google Drive has a trash folder, so it doesn't go anywhere unless they permanently delete it. But if they've put it in their trash folder, which usually what happens is they're recording several and they record over one another, and they finally choose their version and they upload their version, and then they accidentally delete that version instead of the version that they didn't want to keep. So they just have to follow this easy solution. And then cannot access the file, that is really the most common. And in the interest of being kind but factual, I'm an accountant, so I'm just going to be transparent and factual. The students will tell you emphatically sometimes that they can access the file, so why can't you? Instead of following this solution. Instead of following this solution here, they'll say, but I can open it, why can't you? Two reasons. The first is they're the owner, so they can open it. clicking this blue shareable link here, that makes it change the permissions so that you can view it. So they will say, I did it correctly, why can't you view it? So it's because they're the owner. The other thing is they could have copied the shareable link, but they may not have navigated directly to Canvas to upload that link. So there is 2 places they have to go, and there could be break in the procedure between those 2. So just be patient. Just understand that they probably do think that they really followed the procedure, but if they did, you could watch it. And I have gotten in Zoom sessions in the last several months, and every single time when the student thought for sure they followed the directions, I had them show me in Zoom. If it got to that point, I had them show me in a Zoom session, and sure enough, they hadn't followed the exact steps. So just kind of guide them back repeatedly to these troubleshooting. And worst case scenario in the short term, if I'm trying to grade something, only a couple of times out of hundreds and hundreds of assignments, maybe 2 or 3 times, I've said to a student, okay, open your recording, play it for yourself while you're screencasting it, and send me that new link. And then later, let's try it again. Let's get together in Zoom. So these bullet points are very extreme, less than 1% absolutely of the group. So these are practice. This is a practice assignment that I utilize that you're welcome to try. Meet your instructor. It has multiple uses. I do want to say about these, I won't go into extensively, but all of this about Google Slides, I left that in there because I use Google Apps. So this is not a requirement of Screencastify. So if these instructions seem daunting to you, just eliminate the Google Apps part, do whatever assignment you want, and just include down here at the bottom, the create and the upload. So this is really the main part that you need from this whole document. I've just given you all of it. So in case you want to use Google Apps, which I found are great to check revision history and to get in and collaborate with students and help them on assignments. So I've given you all of it, but really just these 2 bullet points are the Screencastify specific tasks. So I've given you the practice assignment and an example of one way that I use it as a formative assessment. And here is a rubric that I use. I use a 4-point rubric. So this is 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. I find this very easy to grade and easy to defend. What I mean by that is minor deviations and some major deviations, really easy to defend that. Something minor, click it here. Otherwise, this means it's perfect. So if it's just something small, it's here. If it's something big, it's here. I use unsatisfactory, many major, rarely, because that's harder to defend, because students will say, I think it's only some major and not many major. So consider that when you're grading, if you use this rubric. Consider only using the unsatisfactory, which is only 1 point in that category, unless it's really, really unsatisfactory. And you can defend saying, yes, there are many major deviations here that really just make it unacceptable. And of course, you can change any of these items. Now, in business, being concise is extremely important in business communications. So clear and concise is our mantra. So if you're teaching something where conciseness is not as important, maybe the arts, maybe the performing arts, or the fine arts, then you may want to change that to creativity. So if creativity is more important to you, or of course you can add a creativity component. So those are the deliverables. And summative assessments, I didn't give an example, but I currently use capstone projects. You have up to 5 minutes per recording, free for each screencast in Screencastify. But what I like to do is break it up. So my capstone projects might be 6 or 7 components. For example, in data analytics, I have them review their variables, discuss independent versus dependent, do a bunch of other things. And then in Excel, I'll have a separate screencast for just the pivot table, a separate one for the correlation, a separate one for the regression analysis. And that way, the students can break it up into, say, 1-minute chunks, 1 to 2 minutes, depending on how complex the task is, and they don't have that pressure of recording for 5 minutes straight, making a mistake almost at the end and saying, oops, I better record again. Screencastify, you can clip, I believe, the beginning and ending, but it doesn't have editable features. So I would strongly suggest, if you're doing more than a minute or two, to chunk it up, to break it up into manageable recordings for your students. And with teams, I have done this with team projects. When you have multiple students each doing their 1 to 2 minutes, then you just have them put a slide at the beginning of their presentation. And I use Google Slides so they can collaborate. And the beginning slide has the links of each student. So when I open that Google slide, I just click on one link at a time in succession, and I'm basically watching the group present together as though they were walking up to the classroom one at a time to do their piece. So I found that quite helpful. Now, let's try another Slido. Do your students use screencasting for their assignments? Okay, well, I am hoping this will change after you see this session. I'm hoping that you will find this useful and maybe even enjoyable for your students. So that's very helpful feedback. Thank you all. And I'm going to do a very quick walkthrough of these 3 elements. The Screencastify tips document has tutorials that students will watch before they learn the ins and outs, but I'll just show you some highlights. I'll show you how easy it is to open the screencast, do a very quick recording, and then some tips for uploading to Canvas. And after you install the extension, which is just a few seconds, you'll see this puzzle piece here in Google, which are your extensions. You're going to left click, and then you're going to click on Screencastify. So now you should see my Google browser, and you should see a small screen dialog box with pink orange at the coral pink at the top. And just real quick, I will show you when I mentioned in the tips what the options should be set. These are defaulted to Google Drive. That's already defaulted, but you want them to be signed into FAU Google Drive when they use this. And this is another default I mentioned in the tips, open video page after recording. So they shouldn't have to set these, but I like to mention it to make sure that they check their defaults. Okay. So now we are back in our Screencastify dialog box. And they have some options. Make sure they have the microphone, and they can do a countdown, or anybody can do. I like 3 seconds. It's just enough. Desktop will show everything. Again, you want to refer to the tips for some more helpful hints. And it's just a matter of opening this and clicking record. So I'm going to click record, and my screen is being recorded now. So I'm going to check entire screen. Application window. I tell students in the tips not to use that because it won't show drop-down boxes like if they're showing Excel. When you choose submenus in certain applications, it won't show. So now this is being recorded. So if I went here, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to search FAU and go to the FAU website. The FAU website comes up. This is all I'm going to show. And now down here at the bottom, you see this stop sharing button. I'm going to click on that. And because we set open after recording, after they click stop, their recording automatically comes up, and you can see it automatically starts to play for them. So now you're seeing the recording, the screencast I just did. So if they don't like it at this point, they just delete it and record another one. They can rename their recording by double clicking up here. But the most important thing of this entire process is this blue button. It is the most important thing. I'm going to show you why, but students do not have to do what I'm going to do next. I'm just going to show you why it's important. If we click this more options button, notice by default that all recordings are private. Only you, which means the user logged in, can view the video. Watch what happens when we click copy shareable link. It changes the permission. Did you notice for just a quick moment, it said enabled link sharing and then said copied? And no, I didn't touch this. It automatically changed the permission to whoever has the link can view. So students don't have to look at this drop down, but it automatically happens behind the scenes. So I tell them not to, I don't even tell them about this drop down because I don't want them to change it. But when they copy it, just by nature, that's one of the beauties of Screencastify is it automatically changes the sharing. So then they just go to their Canvas. So now I'm navigating to Canvas as a student view. And when they submit assignment, down here at the bottom, and I will show you how to get this box on your assignments, just a moment, they'll choose in this website URL, which is part of my tips, and they just click here and Control V and paste it, and then click Submit Assignment. I tell them in my tips not to click Google Drive. When they click this, sometimes it will still work. I'm masquerading as a student, so it won't link to my drive. But if they try and upload it as a Google Drive file, it will generally be an MP4, and they then have to share the file itself. So copying the shareable link doesn't always, I found, change the file itself. It should, but it doesn't always, depending on how students have their Google Drive settings. So just always keep going back to here. Sometimes students have loaded it here and it has worked, and I'm happy with that if it keeps working. But now I will show you where to add this box to your assignments. So now we are navigating to my instructor view. So here I am on the assignment. When you are creating or editing your assignment, oops, I'm in student view, sorry about that. Okay, so now I'm out of student view, and here's your assignment. So you scroll down, and under submission type, you click select online, and then you click website URL. So that's how you get that box where you can enter your Screencastify URL. And here's a list of suggestions. I'm going to highlight a few. This first one, resist the temptation to allow students to re-record. I tried that in the beginning, because before I knew all of the troubleshooting aspects, when I was first using this in the fall, and I would just say, okay, in the interest of time, just re-record. And it does two obvious things. One is it doesn't get the student to a place where they can follow the procedures and record the way they should, or upload the way they should. And secondly, it's basically allowing them to submit after the deadline. And when word gets out for that, you're basically giving some students an advantage to re-record and change their assignment after the deadline. So that's a very slippery slope there. Definitely allocate enough time to make sure everybody does your practice assessment, whatever it is, and do not even open any other screencast assignments before you make sure everybody's on board with the practice. Because even for those students who want to work ahead, they may have made a mistake in their link, in their practice, and then now you have 2 or more assignments to help them troubleshoot. I do this temporary grade of 0. I didn't do it at first, but if you just leave it ungraded when you know you can't view the recording, then the students it won't be enough of a notification. I send them comments in the assignment as well as a separate Canvas message, but it wasn't much of a motivator to get them to change it right away. And what happened at the end of the term was I ended up with I have all these ungraded assignments, and then you're scrambling to fix it at the end of the term. Or students reach out to you and say, you didn't grade my assignment, but everybody else in class got a grade. Why isn't mine graded? So I found that if I put a 0 grade and announce at the beginning and throughout, remember, check for 0 grades. And I have an announcement, a standard announcement about check for 0 grades. It could just be Screencastify. Look at the tips for troubleshooting. The 0 will get their attention and they will reach out. So that's why I do it. I consider dropping the lowest grade to reduce the panic of trying new technology for the first time. Be strict with the time limit. I understand that some of you may not want to do that, and it certainly is up to you. And yes, I'm an accountant, so I'm really intense about deadlines. But why I found the time limit is beneficial is it requires the students to practice in advance. And usually when the students say, I don't have enough time, I say, keep practicing and reduce your presentation to only the most important information. And to me, that's the real reason for the time limit, is for them to practice, to stay within time, and to consolidate their information and triage, if you will, what they should be saying is the most important. Now, I teach to prepare students for the business world, where its time limit is very important. Someone will say, get your point across or get out of my office. So sometimes that would happen. But even for any discipline, having a time limit requires them to really think about what they're saying instead of just hitting the record button and kind of doing a stream of consciousness. So I would recommend that regardless of your discipline, but of course it's your choice. I put some things in a specific order, and I'll tell them you get a credit for it in a specific order, because the grading, if you're doing even just a 2-minute and you've got 6 different elements, as you're listening, you're trying to say, okay, which element did they hit? Which marks did they hit? But if you have them do it in order, it makes your grading a lot easier. Click View in a New Link tab when you are in SpeedGrader. You can see the Google link, and then there'll be right below it, there'll be something called View in a New Link tab. View in a New tab link. There are 2 different links. If you click the Google link, you'll get a snap error message. If you click View in a new tab will open and the recording will play. And sometimes the format will look different. Sometimes a student might choose the embed code instead of the Screencastify link, or it might just be the way they recorded it in their browser. I'm not exactly sure why sometimes the format looks different in SpeedGrader. It's usually 1 out of maybe 100 submissions, but then just look for those little icons that you're familiar with, which are a little square with an arrow in it that you see all throughout Canvas that says to open in a new page. But these are rare. With that in mind, we have a Padlet. And on the Padlet, now that you've learned more about screencasting, can you think of ways that you might use these assignments in your courses? I'm going to navigate to the Padlet to show you what I've got. I added this to give you an example. So you just double click anywhere on the Padlet, and it will open up a new Post-it, and then you can type in there. And while people are contributing to the Padlet, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Richardson. It's Tim here. Somebody had a question early on about the cost of Screencastify and Screencast-O-Matic. Could you go over the pricing options again for both students and instructors?
Yes, Screencastify, both tools are free for any user. Screencastify, the free limit, you can only record up to 5 minutes per recording, but you can do an unlimited number of recordings. So I found that for students, that's all you need. Screencast-O-Matic does have a free version. They change, the last I read, you can record unlimited, but you can only store 1 at a time. They change their recordings, their restrictions. So Screencastify, I like it because it's unlimited recordings and 5 minutes, which is plenty. The paid version, there is a Screencastify paid version if you want to do more than 5 minutes, but I would say chunk up your assignments instead. Don't have students record more than 5 minutes in one sitting. It's too daunting. Screencast-O-Matic, there for instructors, I believe it's $48 a year. I just renewed mine a few months ago, and that is incredibly worth it. It's a great value. It's a great tool. It's just for the auto captions themselves to be able to be SAS compliant or and to provide captions to students, invaluable. But for students, both these tools are free. Okay, so I'm seeing some comments, but does anyone want to double click? You can either double click and create a new if you have any ideas. If not, let's see, I find Padlets okay on a computer, but not on a small screen. Thank you for that tip about Padlets. Team projects to see participation. Yes, definitely. Research presentation. Yes, absolutely. Demonstrate knowledge. Definitely. Narrated culture presentation. Yes, I saw I was in a professional development session last fall, and an art history teacher had students go around, even just in their house, and describe something in their house as though it was a work of art, using terminology from their art history class. So even if it was, a trinket on their shelf, they described it like a work of art because they couldn't go to museums because of COVID. So yes, definitely in the arts. All right, wonderful. Thank you for that feedback. Any other question? Does anybody want to unmute their mic or?
Well, I wanted to let everyone know that we will definitely be sending out these links, And I don't know about everyone else, but I am definitely going to rewatch in order to solidify this information. Renee knows that I am not fluent in accounting, so sometimes she loses me. But
And I'll give Dr. Dunn some kudos, which I do every time I use Google Apps. And she was the one that got me started on Google Apps when the university first introduced them. And they are just fabulous, both for your own personal use, your professional use, and for students' use, sharing with students, gathering information, doing polls. I use them for scholarship voting with my colleagues, lots of things included outside the student assignments. So thank you again, Dr. Dunn, for introducing me to a technology, Google Apps, years ago.
so perhaps one or the other of you, or both of you, might want to consider a professional development on effective use of them.
Mhm. Sure. Oh, and you know what I saw this morning? In fact, we have 2 minutes. I'll share my screen and show you something that I just noticed that I am going to try out. Screencastify has a new training for Google Apps and Screencastify. So let me get back to my screen. I'll show you where to access it after you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right, so you should see my Google. So when you open, you should be seeing my Google
Yes.
browser. So when you open your Screencastify, after you upload it or install the extension, this bell shape is notifications. And you should have this, it's from January 10th, so it should come up. If not, Google it on your, can you see my screencast, my notifications dialog?
Yes, we sure
So
can.
see how it says love using Screencastify? I saw this morning when I was opening everything to do this presentation, and it made me smile because here's their link, Screencastify, packed with ways to marry Google Apps and Screencastify. So I will definitely be taking a look at this.
Nice. That looks interesting.
Mm-hmm. I just want to thank everybody for participating in the polls today. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate the fact that you are here with us and are willing to share your time with us. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.